On February 28, 1942, at Camp Elliott near San Diego, Philip Johnston walked into a Marine Corps test with 4 Navajo men and 6 written combat messages. One message said, "Enemy expected to make tank and dive bomber attack at dawn." The Marines had machines for secret traffic. A 3-line message went out, came back, and was decoded in about 20 seconds. The machines needed closer to 30 minutes, and Japan never broke it. Johnston was a civil engineer, a World War I veteran, the son of a missionary. He had been raised on the Navajo reservation from the age of 4, and he was one of the very few non-Navajos fluent in the language. Early in 1942, he took his idea to the Marines. At Camp Elliott, Major James E. Jones helped set up the demonstration. 2 Navajos were put in one room, 2 in another. The test messages were handed over. Major General Clayton B. Vogel watched what happened. On March 6, Vogel wrote to the commandant of the Marine Corps. He recommended recruiting 200 Navajos. He described the language as completely unintelligible to outsiders. Chester Nez was Navajo. He would become one of the first 29 code talkers. He later wrote, "When I was 8, I was sent to the first of a series of Bureau of Indian Affairs boarding schools, where I was punished for speaking my native language. Now the Marines wanted that language at once." Navajo was not written down in common use at the time. Its sounds and grammar were extremely difficult for outsiders, and it was estimated that no more than about 30 non-Navajos understood it. In May 1942, 29 Navajo men were sworn in at Fort Wingate, New Mexico. They became Platoon 382. The oldest was Carl N. Gorman. He was over 30. He told the Marines he was 28 so he could serve. After boot camp, the men went to Camp Pendleton. Chester Nez described what happened next. He said the major took them into a great big room and told them they were going to develop a code in your own language. Then, Nez said, the officer left the room, and he locked the door behind him. Inside that room, the Navajos did not simply translate English into Navajo. The first layer was an alphabet. A could be Wallachie, ant. E could be Dze, elk. F could be Ma, a, fox. The second layer was a vocabulary of metaphors. A fighter plane became Da-he-ti-hi, hummingbird. A dive bomber became Guinea, chicken hawk. A bomber became Jay-sho, buzzard. A torpedo plane became Taschizi, swallow. A submarine became an ironfish. Germany became Besh-bicha-he, iron hat. The Philippines became floating land, and the United States became Nehema, our mother. Men whose language had been forbidden in school chose our mother as the code word for the country they were fighting for. The first code had about 211 terms. By April 1943, it had grown beyond 400. The alphabet expanded from 26 entries to 44, so enemy cryptanalysts could not spot simple letter patterns. Nothing went to the front on paper. It lived in memory. On Guadalcanal, Lieutenant Sanford B. Hunt, a Marine signal officer, doubted the system, so he tested the Navajos. He gave them a message he estimated would take about 4 hours through the mechanical shackle system. The Navajo team returned it correctly in about 2.5 minutes. Chester Nez later said, "Lieutenant Hunt was impressed, but we Navajo code talkers already knew our code was good." Nez also recounted his first combat transmission. In his account, the message translated as, "Enemy machine gun nest on your right flank, destroy." The opening protocol itself used New Mexico or Arizona, followed by date and time in Navajo. Then came the message, but there was another danger. It came from the American side. Many Marines had never seen a Navajo. In the confusion of the Pacific War, some code talkers were mistaken for Japanese soldiers. Bill Toledo was nearly shot by a fellow Marine on Bougainville. Afterward, he was assigned a personal bodyguard. According to Toledo, that bodyguard had a second standing order. If capture threatened, he was to prevent the code talker from being taken alive. The order never had to be carried out. Tom Holliday was detained twice by American troops who thought he was Japanese. Once, he was taken to a compound holding Japanese prisoners. The men carrying America's only unbroken code needed guards to protect them from Americans. From 1942 to 1945, Navajo Code Talkers took part in every major marine amphibious assault in the Pacific. Their total number was about 400. Japan did try. The one documented attempt came through one man, Sergeant Joe Lee Kiyomai. He was Navajo. He served in the 200th Coast Artillery of the New Mexico National Guard. He was captured when the Philippines fell in 1942. He survived the Bataan Death March. He was held for 43 months. Japanese interrogators had intercepted Navajo radio traffic. They understood that it was a human language, not just a machine cipher, and now they had a Navajo prisoner. Kiyomai later told the Deseret News what happened. "I told them I was Navajo. They didn't believe me." Then he said, "The only thing they understood about Americans was black and white. I guess they didn't know about Indians." One day, 2 Japanese women visited me, Kiyomai recalled. They wrote Navajo words in English and asked what they meant. He answered, "This means bird, this means turtle, this means water." A fluent Navajo speaker could translate the words. He still could not read the message. Kiyomai had never been trained. "I didn't know about the code," he said. Punishment followed anyway. Kiyomai described being forced to stand outside in snow at 27 degrees for an hour. The guard said if I moved, he would shoot me. "I left my souls on that parade ground. I wanted to die." He remained a prisoner. He was in Nagasaki when the second atomic bomb fell, and he survived. 50 years later, he said, "I salute the code talkers, and even if I knew about their code, I wouldn't tell the Japanese." February 1945, Iwo Jima. Major Howard Connor was the signal officer of the 5th Marine Division. Under him, 6 Navajo Code Talkers worked through the first 48 hours, around the clock, message after message. More than 800 went through, not one error. Captain Ralph J. Sturkey wrote the 5th Marine Division's battle report. He called the Navajo Code the simplest, fastest, and most reliable means of sending classified messages. It was a combat report, written at the time. Then came Connor's verdict. Were it not for the Navajos, the Marines would never have taken Iwo Jima. On February 23, 1945, the flag went up on Mount Suribachi. Popular accounts say the mountain's name moved down the radio net letter by letter in the Navajo animal alphabet. Sheep, uncle, ram, ice, bear, ant, cat, horse, itch. The alphabet and the practice are documented. The primary record for that specific transmission is not. By June 1945, Lieutenant General Seizo Arisu was head of the Imperial Japanese Army's intelligence department. He had served as military attaché in Rome. He had served in China. After the surrender, he was one of the senior Japanese officers who met the first American occupation aircraft at Atsugi Airfield on August 28, 1945. According to the wording later entered into the U.S. Congressional record, Arisu said that the Japanese were never able to crack the code used by the Marines and the Navajos. The men who carried it came home. Native Americans had been U.S. citizens since the Indian Citizenship Act of 1924, but voting was controlled by states. In Arizona and New Mexico, many native people were still blocked from the ballot. On May 6, 1946, 2 former Marine Code Talkers, Jimmy King and Howard Nez, walked into the Shiprock Public School in New Mexico to register to vote. They were refused. Arizona's barrier fell on July 15, 1948, in Harrison v. Levine. That case was brought by Frank Harrison, a World War II veteran, and Harry Austin. They were Mojave Apache from the Fort McDowell Reservation, not Navajo. The county recorder, Roger G. Levine, had refused to register them under the state claim that Indians were persons under guardianship. The Arizona Supreme Court reversed that old rule. New Mexico followed later, Utah later still, and the Navajo Code itself remained classified until 1968. For 23 years after the war, these men could not tell their families, an employer, or a VA clerk what they had done. Chester Nez later wrote, "I was extremely proud to serve as a Marine, and very proud that my language, which we had been forbidden to speak the entire time I attended boarding school, ended up being one of the main reasons we won the war in the Pacific." On July 26, 2001, the original Navajo Code Talkers were honored with the Congressional Gold Medal in the Rotunda of the United States Capitol. 4 of the 5 surviving members of the first 29 were there: Alan June, Lloyd Oliver, Chester Nez, and John Brown Jr. President George W. Bush described them as men who, in a desperate hour, gave their country a service only they could. Then John Brown Jr. joked, "Maybe Japan is listening."